Seasoned sailors know that the sea holds many secrets. The yacht washed ashore. The carriage disappeared without a trace, as if it had never existed. Maybe the old legend turned out to be true. Or is there a rational explanation for this event? The detective has already taken up this case. Dear friends, do not forget to subscribe to the channel. It is very important. Thank you very much. The dawn over the small coastal town of Nordheim was ordinary and calm. Foggy waves lazily washed ashore, enveloping tiny boats and moored vessels in a thick haze. Fishermen, as always, started their day before the first glimmer of sunlight. Hans Muller, an old-timer with a weathered face and strong arms, was the first to notice something strange on the horizon. "Hey, look over there!" he shouted to his companions, pointing towards a large white shadow that was slowly bobbing on the waves. It was a sailing yacht, washed up on a sandy beach and tilted slightly to one side. The yacht was named Loretta, a well-known vessel among the locals, often used for rent by tourists and yachtsmen. Soon a small crowd of locals gathered around the yacht. Just by looking at the yacht, everyone realized that something was wrong. Everything was quiet, but from the deck it was clear that the ship was in disarray. The sails were torn and hung in shreds, as if after a battle with a violent storm. The dashboard was broken, and the side was stained in places with salty streaks of water, as if the ship had recently survived a severe storm. But there was no storm that night, and this caused many to exchange wary glances. A couple of hours later, Martin Schultz, the owner of the yacht rental company, arrived at the site. A tall man with neatly combed back gray hair, he did not hide his excitement. The Loretta was one of his best yachts, and the mysterious appearance of the vessel without a crew meant not only financial losses, but also a blow to the company's reputation. "Hans, what did you see last night?" Martin asked, turning to the old fisherman. "Nothing, Mr. Schultz, nothing suspicious," he replied, shaking his head. "The night was calm, but sometime in the morning, I would have sworn that I heard a strange singing, as if the sea itself was singing. I thought I was imagining things." Schultz frowned. He had heard stories about the songs of the sea, ancient legends that have long been part of local folklore. He didn't believe in such stories, but was it worth writing it off as a coincidence? Half an hour after Martin's appearance, Christian Wolf, a detective known locally for his determination and thoroughness, arrived at the scene. Tall, with piercing gray eyes and a short beard, he was a man who was approached in the most complicated cases. "Martin, I need to see everything inside," Wolf said, walking around the yacht to examine the damage from different angles. He quickly noted the scratches that ran along the side, as if the claws of a giant creature had been passed over the ship. There was a disturbing thought about the possible involvement of something unknown or skillful. Upon entering the ship, Wolf felt a slight smell of burning mixed with salty dampness. Inside the cabin, there was a complete mess. Cards were scattered on the floor. One of the tables was overturned, and in the corner of the cabin there was an overturned cup, which seemed to have been dropped at the last moment. The shelves were noticeably missing the personal belongings of the crew members, which indicated the panic and haste with which they left the yacht. But where did they go? The life jackets were in place, which means that the abandonment of the ship was sudden and unprepared. Martin stood at the entrance, his face expressing bewilderment and alarm. "You don't think it has anything to do with those old stories, do you?" He spoke softly, not hiding his tension. "It's too early to say anything yet," Wolf replied glumly, "but I'm going to find out what happened." Thus began an investigation that promised to become one of the most mysterious and dangerous stories in the detective's career. The appearance of a yacht without a crew has already become rumored, turning into an urban legend in a matter of hours. It was said that the sea spirits had taken the crew away, that an ancient curse had finally overtaken them. But Christian Wolfe did not believe in superstition. He believed in facts and evidence. The day after the discovery of the yacht, Wolfe returned to the Loretta to conduct a more thorough investigation. Martin Schultz, despite a sleepless night, was already in place and nervously watched the detective stroking his neat gray beard with his fingers. "It all smells bad, Christian. People are already whispering and local journalists are ready to write about ghosts and sirens," he said with annoyance, crossing his arms over his chest. "Calm down, Martin. I'll find the answers," Wolfe replied calmly, straightening his thick coat and preparing for the examination. Upon entering the deck, the detective noticed more detailed features that at first glance might have escaped attention. The scratches on the side, which he had noticed casually yesterday, looked even more ominous in daylight. They were deep and long, running along the entire starboard side, as if huge claws were tearing at the wooden panels. The cabin was quiet, but there was a strange, oppressive atmosphere. Wolfe noticed the numerous nautical charts scattered on the floor. Some of them were crumpled, others had bold markings and arrows pointing to a certain point in the open sea. "Look," whispered one of the fishermen, who looked inside, pointing to an old compass, the needle of which was shaking and spinning non-stop. It looked strange, especially in conditions of complete calm. Christian frowned. Problems with the equipment could explain the panic on the ship, but it was not enough to solve it. Then his gaze fell on a small notebook lying in the corner, half hidden under an overturned drawer. He carefully picked it up, recognizing the initials on the cover, A.L. The diary of Anna Leifman, one of the crew members, might have been the key to understanding what happened. Turning over the first pages, Wolfe read about ordinary everyday life at sea, descriptions of the sun, waves, conversations on deck. But then the records got darker. On one page, stained with dried water stains, it was written, "May 6th. I heard that sound again last night, a dull singing like the wind howling through the rocks, but we are in the open sea. Gerhard, the captain, told me not to pay attention, but everyone's faces are pale. More and more often I notice that the yacht itself changes course, as if someone invisible is steering it, I'm afraid." Wolfe raised his head, feeling a chill run down his spine. If someone else were talking about such phenomena, they would write it off as overwork or fear of the inexplicable. But Anna was known to be a calm and reasonable person, and her words were trustworthy. The detective continued to study the diary. The following notes mentioned conversations with the captain, his reluctant admission that he also heard strange noises, but did not want to scare the crew. A couple of entries talked about sudden failures in the operation of radio equipment and compass, and one page was torn out, leaving a ragged edge and unanswered questions. "Christian, is this something supernatural?" Martin's voice was trembling with excitement. "Don't jump to conclusions," Wolfe replied firmly, closing the diary. "Before believing in fairy tales, let's check what the facts say." He looked back at the panorama of the sea, where the wave lines converged on the horizon, and thought that even the most obvious things could hide secrets that were not so easy to solve. The day began gray and damp. A fine rain pattered on the tiled roofs of Nordheim, filling the air with the smell of wet wood and the sea. Christian Wolfe left his temporary office, heading for the harbor, which looked even more gloomy this morning. Martin Schultz, still worried, decided to stay at the company, working to smooth out the nervous moods of his employees and prevent information leaks to the press. In the harbor, life went on as usual. Fishermen unloaded their boats, hurriedly communicated, and seemed to ignore the unusual incident. But as soon as Wolfe got closer, he noticed that the conversations abruptly subsided and the glances were filled with tension. "Detective, good morning," Hans Muller greeted him, pulling the net out of the water. His face was lined and worried. Hans was a local old-timer who knew all the stories and rumors about the sea. "Hans, I need to talk to you. You saw the Loretta the day before it was discovered, didn't you?" Wolf looked at the fisherman expectantly. He wiped his hands on an old rag, frowned and nodded. "Yes, I saw it. We were just returning from a night fishing trip. About 4 o'clock in the morning, the moon shone brightly, as at noon. I noticed the yacht when it passed us, but something was wrong." His voice faltered, and he looked doubtfully at the detective. "She moved strangely, as if someone was controlling her, but clumsily. She swerved sharply, then slowed down, as if she was afraid of something." Wolf listened to him with a straight face, but a spark of anxiety lit up inside. He knew that Hans was not the type to give in to fantasies easily. "Did you notice someone on deck?" Wolf asked. "That's the point, detective." Hans shrugged, as if trying to explain the inexplicable. "I looked, and it seemed that there was no one there. I wanted to call out, but I felt somehow, something's wrong. It was as if a voice in my head was whispering to me to be silent." These words made Wolf tense up. He had already heard from Martin about the legends of the siren song, and now it was beginning to take shape. He decided to talk to other fishermen and residents to gather more details. In the small tavern Golden Anchor, where sailors gathered after a hard day's work, Wolf came across Matthias Kraus, the owner of the tavern shop. He was a short, broad-shouldered man with a thick red mustache that twitched at every word he said. "Do you want to know about the song?" Matthias chuckled, but his eyes were serious. "It's an old story, detective. They say sirens sing in the night, luring souls into the sea. No one has seen them, but everyone has heard from someone who got lost in the storm." Wolf frowned, flipping through the memories of Anna Lehman's diary, which mentioned strange night sounds. Everything was forming an alarming mosaic, but it did not give a clear answer. Hans mentioned that he heard this sound, as if the wind was singing. "It's true?" Wolf asked, turning to Matthias. The innkeeper stopped wiping his mug and leaned closer. "We all know what happens to those who hear a song, Christian. They either don't come back or they lose their minds. They say there are places in the sea where you don't hear a sound, but a call that penetrates right into your heart. No one knows if it's just the wind or something ancient and evil." These words hung in the air like thick smoke. Wolf wondered if the crew of the Loretta had panicked because of these legends, or was there something more? All he knew was that he had a new trail now. The way to the solution lay through these myths, but one had to be prepared to face the harsh reality. After leaving the inn, Wolf looked out at the sea, calm and endless, but he knew that there was something darker behind this illusion. Night fell, enveloping Nordheim in cool darkness. Only the light of the lighthouse at the far end of the pier cut through the darkness, illuminating the broken surface of the sea with flashes. Christian Wolf, dressed in a thick coat and armed with a lantern, slowly climbed onto the deck of the yacht Loretta. Today, his goal was to immerse himself in the night sounds that the fishermen and the entries in Anna Lehman's diary talked about. He looked around, listening to the waves lazily flowing around the side of the yacht. The silence was broken, as if the night itself was holding its breath in anticipation. The watch on his wrist showed exactly midnight. At that moment, for the first time, Wolf heard the sound that all the inhabitants of Nordheim were whispering about, a low rumble that turned into a melody, as if the wind was playing on the strings of a huge instrument. The sound coming from somewhere in the depths of the sea was mesmerizing but frightening. It intensified, making Wolf feel a slight itch in the back of his neck and a chill in his spine. The flashlight wavered in his hand, but the detective gathered himself, took out a recording device, and turned it on. The melody was recorded in a smooth background, enriched by the rustle of water and gusts of wind. Almost mechanically, Wolf repeated Hans's words to himself, a song calling from the sea. He caught himself unconsciously taking a step towards the side, as if the sound attracted him, beckoned. At the last moment, he stopped, averting his gaze and catching his breath. Whatever it was, it defied simple explanation. "You're not here to be a victim, Wolf," he muttered to himself, pulling his collar up higher and turning toward the cabin. Inside, by the light of a small lantern, he opened Anna Leifman's diary again. He flipped through the pages until he came across a handwritten note marked May 9th. "Today, the captain told me about an old wreck. He was more restless than ever. He was talking about the Black Maria, a merchant ship that disappeared in these waters more than 100 years ago. It is said that his crew heard the same tune, and no one knows what became of them. But Captain Gerhard insisted that the ship existed, that he himself had seen the remains of its sails underwater." This recording made Wolf freeze. The legend of the Black Mary was known among the elderly, but no one took it seriously. Until today. After collecting the recordings and turning on the device, the detective headed towards the office to send the sound to a specialist. Max Weiss, a well-known acoustician in scientific circles, was not only a friend of Wolf, but also a man who knew how to find answers where others heard only noise. "Max, I'm sending you a recording," Wolf was saying on the phone, sitting in his office and nervously tapping his fingers on the table. "Have you ever heard something like that?" The answer on the other end of the line was serious. "Christian, I will check it out, but already now I can say that if this is a natural phenomenon, then it is very rare. Give me some time." The conversation ended, leaving Wolf to ponder. The sounds of the night, the sea legends and the stories of the old ship, all this merged into a single canvas, making even the most convinced skeptics doubt. At night, alone with his thoughts, the detective looked out the window at the dark sea, where the answers to his questions were hidden in the depths. It was becoming increasingly obvious that the truth was not only on the surface. To find her, you had to immerse yourself in the stories that the sea kept. In the morning, after a night filled with heavy thoughts, Wolf received a call from Max Weiss. The speaker's voice sounded focused, but with a hint of surprise. "Christian, I've listened to your recording dozens of times," he began. "These sounds are similar to those recorded by underwater monitoring stations for acoustic anomalies. This is something in between a natural phenomenon and an artificially created signal. If it is natural, then this is one of the rarest cases. If it's artificial, then someone was trying to create a sound illusion." "What exactly do you mean, Max?" Wolf nervously straightened his tie, listening to every word. "It may be related to underwater faults, the drone of whales, but there is an element that confuses me. The frequencies of the sounds that you recorded are like playing a melody. This is not accidental." These words only strengthened Wolf's resolve. He understood that in order to continue the investigation, he needed to go to the place where the Loretta changed its course for the last time. He assembled a team of scuba divers, experienced marine researchers, ready to dive into any depths. The day turned out to be cloudy, with heavy leaden clouds that hung over the sea. The yacht on which the group sailed reached the point indicated on the map found on the Loretta. Wolf stood on the deck, watching the scuba divers prepare. Their wetsuits glittered in the sun, beating off the light. The team consisted of 3 people: Lars Becker, the group commander, Leona Koehler, a specialist in underwater archaeology, and Thomas Fisher, a technician responsible for cameras and communications. Everyone was serious, realizing that something unusual was waiting for them. "Christian, we're getting ready to dive," Lars said, checking the equipment. Be careful. If you find anything unusual, report it immediately, Wolf replied, leaning into the microphone of the radio transmitter. The divers disappeared under the water, leaving behind only bubbles rising to the surface. A camera attached to Thomas's helmet transmitted the image to a monitor in the cabin. Slowly sailing past the wreckage of coral and rocks, they came across something that made everyone freeze. In front of them lay the remains of an old ship covered with a layer of silt and marine vegetation. But his silhouette, still massive, was recognizable. "It's the Black Maria," Leona whispered, and her voice, transmitted over the radio, trembled with excitement. Lars approached the hull of the ship, examining the wooden and metal structures. There were no signs of recent activity, but something about this place caused an inexplicable thrill. Thomas felt the cold metal with his hand and came across a metal plate hidden in a crack in the debris. "There's something here," he said, pulling out the find. In the cabin, Wolf saw Thomas handing the plate to Maria, who was wiping it to examine the inscription. On the metal surface, covered with rust, is engraved, "Veritas vincit, truth wins." It was a motto used by sailors in the 19th century, a symbol of hope and victory over the elements of the sea. "This must be part of the bridge," Lars suggested, surveying his surroundings. Wolf thought about it. The motto found in the remains of the ship could indicate something more than just a sunken ship. Something or someone may have purposefully guarded this place. The sound recorded at night, and now the discovery of an ancient ship, began to form a single picture. The only question is which truth should have been defeated, and what happened to the crew of the Loretta. Wolf returned to his temporary office, burdened with new thoughts and guesses. A plate engraved with the motto Veritas Vincit stood on his desk, covered with sea salt and rust stains. Its weight seemed to increase by the minute, as if the metal itself held the secrets of deep waters. The detective began to look through the documents about the Black Maria and the old maps of the coast. In the archives of Nordheim, among the yellowed pages, he found references to the smuggling operations that were carried out by this ship. Wolf caught on to one detail. The ship's captain, Gerhard Horst, was known not only for his skill in navigation, but also for secret deals with smugglers. Meanwhile, Max Weiss contacted Wolf again. "Christian, I have studied the acoustic signal in more detail. At one point, it seemed to me that it contained a structure that might be too complex for an ordinary natural phenomenon. It is likely that this is a coded message, possibly using old marine signals, but I'm still working on it. I've never had to deal with this before." These words made the detective freeze. His hypothesis of human intervention was becoming more and more likely. Perhaps someone used the legend of the siren song to cover up their actions. And if that's the case, who could be so sophisticated as to fake such complex signals? Meeting with Maria Kohler at the local library added new touches to the portrait of events. "Christian," she said, turning over the pages of an old ship's book, "these records confirm that Captain Horst transported not only goods, but also valuables that he hid from taxes and competitors. There is an assumption that before the last flight, he arranged with influential people to transport jewelry that was never found." "And you think that someone could find out about this and try to find the cargo?" Wolf asked, his thoughts quickly starting to intertwine. "It's quite possible," Leona nodded. "If someone knew about the sunken ship and the old legends, they could use them to distract attention. Mysticism always distracts from more prosaic explanations." With a new understanding, Wolf returned to Anna Laffman's diary. He remembered the lines where she described a conversation with the captain, who mentioned that they had approached a place where the past still lives. This phrase, which Wolf had previously considered poetic, has now acquired a new meaning. Perhaps the captain of the yacht, Loretta, knew about the old cargo and was trying to find it to solve his financial problems. However, the puzzle still did not add up completely. Wolf remembered Hans Muller's words about the strange singing and felt a chill run down his spine. He knew that the sounds were too real to be just a trick to intimidate. But who could have the technology or motivation to reproduce them? The key to the solution could be the vulnerable point of the city, its connections with criminal gangs that conducted business through the port. The detective decided that the next day it was necessary to contact local police sources and find out information about new people who could actively search for ancient artifacts and valuables. The morning sun was rising over Nordheim when Christian Wolf, back on the deck of the yacht, looked at the horizon, reflecting on the latest discoveries. Max Weiss, who arrived to meet with the detective, was replaying the audio recording on a portable device. The sound of sirens singing was recreated in a scientific laboratory and carefully studied. "Christian, there's something I've learned." Max leaned closer. "It's not just a sound, and it's not artificial. This is an acoustic wave associated with underwater activity. An old volcanic fault has been recorded in this area, which, under certain conditions, can produce a sound similar to singing." Wolf recalled the details of Anna's diary describing the night sounds and the crew's fear. Everything indicated that the yacht's captain had encountered a phenomenon he was not prepared for. The acoustic wave could affect people's consciousness, causing disorientation and even hallucinations. "That explains why the captain and the crew started acting so strangely," Wolf said, stroking his chin. "They might have been afraid of what they considered a supernatural phenomenon." But where did the people go? It was a question that the detective had not yet found an answer to. Suddenly, Martin Schultz, who was standing nearby, intently listening, intervened in the conversation. "I heard from the old fisherman that there is a small island not far from here. It's uninhabited, but if someone left the ship in a panic, they could swim there," he said, pointing to a map of the coast. This insight prompted Wolf to act. Together with a team of scuba divers and Max Weiss, he went to the island. The sea, despite the clear sky, remained restless, as if it hid the very mystery that the detective was about to reveal. When the yacht reached the island, the search party went ashore. The island was covered with dense thickets, and rocks rose to the sky, blocking the way. Wolf and Max strode forward, carefully examining every detail. And so, among the vegetation, barely visible under a layer of sand and branches, they found footprints and the remains of a campfire. "There were people here," Max exclaimed, pointing to the charred coals. Wolf didn't need any more proof. He quickly searched the nearby surroundings, and soon a muffled scream could be heard in the distance. The surviving members of the Loretta's crew were found in the thicket, weakened but alive. Anna Leifman, the first to recognize Wolf, wept with joy. "It was a sound, Christian. We all heard him, and the captain ordered us to abandon ship, thinking it was cursed. But the storm overturned the rafts, and many of us ended up here on the island," Anna said through tears. Later, when everyone was on board the rescue yacht, Wolf summarized the events. An abnormal acoustic wave emanating from a volcanic fault caused panic on board the Loretta, forcing the captain to make the fateful decision to abandon ship. Poor preparation and stormy weather led to the fact that the team crashed into the waves and was stranded on a small island. Max confirmed that the sounds were of natural origin, but rare and poorly studied. The story of the siren song turned out to be a legend born of the truth. The sea could really make sounds that could drive people crazy. With the return of the Loretta's crew, the residents of Nordheim breathed a sigh of relief. The secret was revealed, and the truth came out. Wolf, proved once again that despite mystical guesses and legends, the truth will always be found if you can see the details and not be afraid to look beyond them. Thank you for listening to this detective story to the end. If you enjoyed it, give this video a like and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. All the best to you.